Hey everyone, my name is Daniel, an indie game developer currently working on Osore, a shoot 'em up roguelite mix. And this here is the third devlog on my game. In the last devlog I made many changes to let the game look really good, and I made new enemies. But I didn't show them all off because I don't want to spoil the complete game in these devlogs. And I gave the game finally a name. So that you now know this, let's get straight to the new things. Since the last devlog, some really exciting things were added to the game, like the upgrade world and the first 2 boss battles for my game. But more on that later. Before I worked on the big things, I had to do some of the smaller ones. I fixed many little glitches and bugs. I added 2 more spells. First, the boomerang spell. It's a projectile that acts like a boomerang, of course. And secondly, the splitter projectile spell. With it you shoot a projectile that splits into 3 weaker and smaller projectiles after a few seconds. Next I made taking damage a bit more juicy, and I created a game over screen. Then I upgraded the pause menu as I already said in the last devlog. Now I changed one thing once again, the health display. In devlog 1 we had a health bar. In devlog 2 we had a text display. And now we have both. Okay, I know that sounds strange, but here's what I mean by that. I made this design here, and you already see text here. This displays the health in numbers. And behind that you have the heart, but separated into fill and the border. When you have maximal health, this is completely full. When you have, for example, the half of the maximal health, it's half full, and so on. Compared to the health design in the last devlog, there's now a limit of health you can have. And this is a big advantage for me designing the overall game. Now that I have this out of the way, I still can't do the exciting fun stuff, because there's no audio yet. For this, I first made an audio manager to call and play sounds more efficient. And then it was my turn finding and buying some sound effects on the Unity asset store and implementing them. It went pretty fast to implement a sound effect, thanks to my audio manager. But it still took some time, because there were many sounds needed. Now I was really happy, because I was able to start working on the first boss. So first, some infos about the boss. He's called Glooge, and he's pretty static when fighting him. All of his attacks are done by his Flora turrets. The more damage Glooge takes, the more turrets will spawn. These turrets shoot fireballs towards the player position. When Glooge reaches 40 health points, he triggers the second stage, in which he won't spawn any new towers, but he begins moving on the ceiling. So it's a bit harder to hit him always. And it brings in some dynamic things in the boss fight besides the projectiles. Then I brought in these veins here and let them break when entering the second stage. And I made the boss corpse and the dimension card. What's that, I hear you ask? It's just a portal that brings you to the next area, aka dimension. After some bug fixing and polishing, the boss fight was finished. Next I illustrated the upgrade world. And I built a few very basic versions of the mechanics of the upgrade world. But I didn't have done much there. So this is a task for future me. After this I jumped onto the next boss called Flora. Other than the first boss, he does all of his attacks by himself, except of the second stage extra attack, but more on that later. The first normal attack is this missile fire. Here Flora plays a little animation and shoots out 2 missiles that follow the player while doing this motion. The second attack is this circle shot. Here the boss shoots out bullets spread in a circle. And the third attack is this bite attack that you already know from the piranha plant enemy. So you can fight the boss with a bit of knowledge you earned in the area. That's the way the bosses in my game will be designed and created. Because I think it's really good when the boss reflects the new features, mechanics or way of design of the area before. The boss is doing all 3 attacks randomly chosen, always with some buffer time in between, to make it not too chaotic. When Flora reaches half of his health, the second stage of the boss fight gets triggered. Here the boss fight brings one more mechanic, the plant shards. Every few seconds they shoot a projectile, but I wasn't quite happy with just shooting simple projectiles. Luckily I quickly had an idea, because a few hours ago I watched the 90th Slime Keep devlog by Bonk, and he added sine wave movement to one of his boss's ballads. So I learned about sine wave movement online, and I implemented that logic into my game. That's a really good addition to the boss fight's second stage, because it was a bit boring without it. Lastly, I did some final polishing and the second boss fight for Area 1 is finished too. Now I wanted to make stylish introduction screens for both of my bosses, like an Enter the Gungeon and Dashing Fire, because it gives the player some small time to chill out before directly get thrown into the fight. And this is how it turned out. I made a small zoom animation on a sprite mask. If you don't know what a 2D sprite mask is, I put a link into the description for the ones that are more curious into this topic. But in short, it acts like a clipping mask in almost every drawing application. Then I just needed to get to one of these boss fights randomly when leaving the 4th level of Area 1. For a few days I was just fixing things, but also finishing up Area 1 for now. Then Friday, the 28th of May, I did my first live stream here on my channel. And I worked on the game in this stream. It was so cool, even that not a lot of people were there. In the live stream I of course fixed the walls again. But I began working on the second area and its first enemy. I made a bit of progress on it, but it's not in a state where I want to show it off. Because everything I really have is the start chunk and 2 enemies. So be excited to see this in the next devlog. But besides this, I redid the introduction screen for the levels. The old version covered almost the complete screen and I wasn't quite happy with the overall look. So I made the new design more packed and smaller. I'm also writing most of the text in my game by hand now, and I added the area names. The first area is called Blossom Skies, and for the second area I decided on the name Fields of Fire. I think both of the names are quite stylish, which fits the overall game pretty well. The last thing I did is I removed the dark levels from the game. I got great feedback from Scaffolds and I wasn't sure about them too. So the only solution are playtesters. Only a very few again, and they think that it's better without the dark levels. So that's why I removed them. That's all for this devlog. I must say there was a really good mix of more boring and really exciting and super fun tasks the past 3 weeks. Which is actually super good for motivation on working on a game. And it really helps to avoid burnout on a project. I don't have huge problems with motivation etc. on making Osore. I just too much like this game. Of course some days I feel uncreative, but that's totally normal. Anyway, maybe you can try out mixing less and more fun tasks for your project. It really helps. Next I will make the second area, so this will be the focus of the next devlog. So see you then. If you want to follow along the rest of our journey creating this game, feel free to subscribe. With all that said, cheers!